Welcome to a very exciting day here at the Empress Studios. Of course, as usual, we look at the best and having the best personalities in the studio to look, or what I call a deep dive into the Nigerian situation. Are we coming out of the bottom? Are we getting better? Is the economy improving? These are some of the questions. Of course, the banking sector has been one of the trailblazers in this economy, whether you like it or not. And today, of course, we're bringing a huge personality in that industry, Abubakar Danlami Suleiman, who has been in the front burner, who has led some couple of big banks in Nigeria who are still doing well, to talk to us. And but before I go into that area, before I bring him into the studio to talk, we also look at the finances of the potential losses of the Super Eagles ouster from the World Cup. Will it reverberate? Will it affect us in the long run? But let's welcome Abubakar Suleiman.
Thank you very much, Felix. Good to see you.
Yeah, let's look at Nigeria. Are we on the right path? Or is there anything we need to tweak?
Yes, thank you very much again, and it's good to be here. Well, in terms of policy, I think to a large extent we have taken some of the right policies.
Okay.
But there's also the part about execution. Okay. And what are the policies that we're talking about? We're talking about policies regarding removal of subsidies. You can call it currency subsidy. You can call it power subsidy, as well as fuel subsidy. Those are policies that ordinarily should help the economy generally going forward. However, I think the issues that we'll probably have may affect the outcome of the expected results from these very good policies will be the execution process. So to a large extent, that's what it is. Globally, what happens is that economies that struggle also look at areas where they can improve their revenue. There's been significant budget deficits over the years.
Yeah.
And for very simple reasons. Because government is also funding certain aspects of lifestyles of citizens, which we call subsidy to a large extent. Okay. So that's why the government has decided to say, okay, see, we are not able to fund this lifestyle anymore. Anybody who decides to have specific or certain consumption patterns should be able to fund them. And so you talk about the fuel subsidy, okay? The only way that the government can do this is because there's been significant abuses in that space. And that's why the government removes fuel subsidy. When I talk about currency subsidy, I mean, some producers should not have better or access to the foreign exchange market than the others. Okay? Yeah. Because the field has to be level playing for everybody. Yeah. And indeed, power. There's been significant investments in the power space. Okay? But what has happened to power in terms of generation, in terms of even distribution? Yeah. Okay? We know the issues with transmission, okay, which this sits with the government. Okay? But what has happened? Serious investments, billions of dollars have gone into the power space. And we can't continue that way. Okay. Every year the government budgets for most of these things, okay, but we never see the results. So if government decides to take itself out in some manner, whether you talk about privatizing the process or removal of subsidies completely, the next phase will be, what do we do with the savings that we earn from not having to budget for some of those subsidies that we, like in the case of fuel, okay, the government doesn't have to borrow anymore to fund subsidy. Almost 70–80% of Nigerians struggle. As we say, they live almost like pay as you go.
Yeah, I understand.
So that's what it is. So you must understand the peculiarity of that demographics and now see how you help them to manage through life when you come up with that policy?
Of course, that has been a lot of issues around the subsidy removal. Yes, you said you were going to save billions in dollars,
Correct.
and that will help the naira. But really, this hasn't really happened. We're still borrowing.
Yes.
And when you're looking at borrowing, are we borrowing for the right things? Because if you borrow for consumption, then you're bound to have crisis.
Correct. So what it is that we may be borrowing for the right things, but unfortunately, because there's been very significant gap in our infrastructure development, okay, the kind of money you need to borrow to fill that gap is massive.
Okay.
And it's not something you can do. You can't cover that gap in a period of 3-4 years. Otherwise, your borrowing will be massive. Today, the total debt profile is about 150 billion. 150 trillion.
Yeah.
About 80 trillion local debt, domestic debt, about 70 trillion foreign debt. Okay. And this shot up in the last 2 years. Okay. Because, yes, true to the promise of the government, they need to fix things. They need to improve on infrastructure. They're trying to do things. And like they say, the government has said, is that all their borrowings are already as in
is it still within
is in the
threshold?
Is in the
Okay.
MTF.
Okay.
You understand? So they're not going outside the medium-term framework.
Okay.
You understand? In going to borrow. Everything is situated in the MTF, and they are project specific.
Okay.
You understand? But I think what it is that there's a lot of hard stuff that they're borrowing for, infrastructure, building roads, which ordinarily should create jobs. Okay, but we need to double check those specific clients in terms of projects that they're carrying out, whether we are truly achieving those results as desired by government. I think that's the critical issue that we need to do. Our borrowings should target employment-generating activities that will begin to create jobs for the average Nigerian. You know, people who are very vulnerable, take them off the streets. That way, those have very significant impact on issues around social issues, crime, and all. Take people off the street. No matter how small the pay is, the stipend is, you get them busy.
Interesting, because now you just touched on the issue of security, which a lot of people have said is probably one of the major problems affecting portfolio investors coming into Nigeria. Do you agree with this?
I will not agree with it because portfolio investors do not necessarily have to be on ground to invest in Nigeria. I mean, you have custodial arrangements with some of the investment houses here who can manage your investments for you. All you need to do is flow your funds into the country. They manage it, they identify assets that you want to buy.
Yeah, why I ask this question is because just the pronouncement of Trump, we lost over 2.4 trillion in the stock.
Yes, but I think that we shouldn't see it in isolation of Trump's announcement. Okay. There's also the issue of the capital gains tax. That's on the front burner.
Which the minister said they will review.
Yeah, so that may assuage or help to temper reactions from the portfolio investors. And we'll probably see, some tempering, you understand, from the investors. And we'll not probably see a lot more flight out of it. But the core issue with security has to do with production. Local production, whether you're talking about from cropping through processing, manufacturing, okay, that's where the bigger impact is. And if you look at where we have significant aggregation of insecurity, it's still in that basket. Okay, the agricultural basket zone, which is the north. Until something is done about that, it's going to be difficult. Yes, we see inflation tempering. Not sure that food inflation is as much as we see the other parts of inflation. But it will be very good if we can truly deal with security issues, right? Particularly in the northern part of the country, where you have sufficient land space for cropping, when you have mass population waiting to be engaged.
Yeah.
You understand? So those are the core issues. So government should be strategic and more deliberate in its development initiatives, okay, to help deal with some of these menace, the problems that we face. That's how come you will now have a more sustainable reduction in inflation and a couple of other things. Because if you don't do that, what you will find is a few other actions that government may take may reverse the gains that they are achieving in inflation. Inflation currently is about 16%, down from 18 last month. Okay? So government has to be more deliberate in ensuring that their actions help to create a sustainable reduction on a permanent basis or stable inflationary trend. That's what's key.
Yeah, when you're looking at inflation, I think I want to look at it from the imported inflation, which is due basically to the devaluation of our currency.
Correct.
Is there any way we can mitigate that? Do you think there's a future in the currency?
Yes, the only way we can deal with that is to ensure that we have a stable currency.
Yeah.
Okay. Today the reserve is at $46.7 billion. Yeah. You understand?
I think that's the highest in about 7 years.
Yes. Yeah. It's something to celebrate. Okay. But it requires sustainable policies that help to that helps their creation to reserves. You understand? Government is working assiduously on the issues of improving the crude volume for, you understand, production. You know, that's one critical issue that government must. The stability of the Niger Delta region, okay, looking at investments and increasing investments in the oil sector, all those are very, very critical. The moment the government can continue to do that, then we'll see improved reserves. But also, government must also touch and ensure fiscal responsibility. We don't have room for waste. The moment the signals are clear from top, okay, everybody will follow
the line. Yeah.
Understand? So that discipline, okay, public sector, public finance discipline, I think is still something that we need to work through. That's how we can sustain what we call the stable reserve regime. And it is a stable reserve regime that can help to create confidence in your currency, okay? Your manufacturers can see through the next 1 year and plan their inventory, okay, decide to import. You know, people are not going to be worrying and say, hey, capital flight. You don't need all of that. That stability is what is key. And the moment that happens, the worry about imported inflation will be
over. But again, you touched on something other when you were talking. I'm talking about the Nigerian massive gas reserve, probably one of the top 5 in the world, especially between the Anambra Imo Basin. Are we doing enough to harness this, especially with the issues in Europe?
Yeah.
What can we do to harness this gas?
No, you see, so this has to do with the total oil and gas master plan that government must focus on, work on. You know, Nigeria is one of the top gas depositories in the world.
Yeah.
Okay. And it is an asset that will pride ourselves so much, particularly when you talk about the transition from to green energy. Okay. And there's a lot of advantage in us even trying to ensure that we improve our productive capacity with gas. I know the government is working on it. Most of the producers today, the oil producers today, particularly most of the corporates, are beginning to focus on gas.
Yeah.
Okay, trying to see how they can improve, okay, their reserves, the gas reserve, how they can improve processing of gas. Recently, we're not talking about the LNG stuff now, but there's been a lot of investment coming in, particularly in the gas space.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Indigenous producers, a few other companies that are beginning to look at, like Walter Smith, they're beginning to look at gas, investment into the gas space as well. So, but government needs to do a lot more than what we do in crude. The major attention has been on crude, trying to improve, we're trying to ensure that we we made the 2 million barrels per day target for crude.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's been significant talk. It's just for us to walk that talk on gas.
All right, let's hope we walk that talk on gas. But the tax, there's been a lot of issues around the tax law, the increase, the reduction, and what have you. How do you see this new tax thing that is kicking in January?
Well, that's a big question for Nigeria. In fact, if you ask me, I think everybody is scared. Everybody is scared. But you will appreciate the position of government, you understand? Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of, over the years, a lot of leakages within the system when it comes to taxation. And I think that first, the objective of this reform is to ensure that the right people pay tax. Okay? And the right taxes have been charged. And that's why you find that if you look at the reform, it has harmonized the respective taxes that should be paid, okay, because of multiple taxation issues and all. Whilst January 1 is a big question for most Nigerians. Issues around capital gains tax. Capital gain. Issues around the 15% fuel tax, which has been dropped now, you understand? Okay. The people feel that they're probably just it's going to worsen the standard of living for Nigerians. Because it's going to increase and worsen the payout for taxation. But government thinks that it's going to improve its revenue. I think that what has to be done is to find a balance between revenue government, and the well-being of the Nigerians. I think that's what the most critical issues are. But of course, some of the taxes that have been pronounced that may commence are necessary. And two, I think they should just ensure that they expand the bracket, the tax bracket, so that more people come into the net, without unduly, putting more pressure on the existing people, corporates that are paying taxes.
Well, quite interesting. Of course, if we continue, I know you are going on for something quickly, but it's really been a great pleasure talking with you. And I'm sure next time we'll be talking about the banking sector. How has it worked? They're making a lot of profit. Is it translating into the well-being of the Nigerian economy? But it's a great pleasure.
Thank you very much. That's a very long discussion.
Very long discussion. We will have that discussion when you have some time.
We'll never end it when we start it. Thank you so much.
All right. Of course, it's really been an exciting moment talking with a mastermind in the finance sector who has really taken us deep round all sectors. But we'll be catching up with him very shortly again for more incisive discussion on some of this topic. Have a pleasant day.
Thank you so much.